K-Man Daily Weather is presented by Fox Business Systems. How much does downtime cost you and your business? Don't let another second go by. Call Fox Business Systems at 776-1452.
Your News Radio KMAN Manhattan area forecast includes a burn ban for Riley County today. Sunshine 71 with northerly breezes up to 20 miles an hour. Clear 47 overnight. Slight chance of an afternoon shower tomorrow. Wind shifting back to the south and being gusty up to 30 miles an hour. A high of 87. Slight chance of a shower and thunderstorm through the evening tomorrow night. Then clear 51 and breezy after midnight. Sunny 70 on Friday.
Digging deeper into the conversations, trends, and ideas impacting Manhattan and the Flint Hills. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
It could be a case study for expectation management. Don't make promises that you cannot keep right away, or at least don't get ahead of your headlights. We're talking about Scorpius, the private sector biologics system that made an announcement a couple of years ago here in Manhattan with a promise of a major economic investment, major private sector job growth to bring to this region, and we have yet to see anything from them. Our guests today are Jason Smith and Daryn Soldan. They are executives with the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce and the point people in our community when it comes to economic development. My name is Mike Matson. This is Within Reason on News Radio KMAN. It's a program designed specifically for conversations like the one we will have today. We are live streaming on YouTube. Search News Radio KMAN, where it will also be posted. We're also being recorded and posted as a podcast. That'll be posted on the KMAN website later. Within Reason does not happen without support, so a quick shout out to McCown Gordon Construction, to Stormont Vale Health, and to the Trust Company. They made an investment in this program on a promise, so we hope we are delivering on that promise. 2.5 years ago, April 2022, the leadership of Manhattan and Pot County packed the Manhattan Conference Center. There were company executives from a Texas-based private sector company then called Scorpion Biological Services. Governor Kelly was there, locally elected leaders, the brass from K-State stood at the podium and announced construction of a new 500,000 square foot biodefense-focused vaccine and biologics manufacturing facility. The idea is it would go up at the corner of U.S. Highway 24 and Excel Road on the Pot County side of Manhattan. There was a promise of 500 jobs with an average wage of $75,000 a year, which would bring an economic impact when fully operational in 20 years, north of $1 billion. The arguments made sense. Manhattan is in the middle of the country with quick access to either coast. K-State, Manhattan Area Technical College, Fort Riley, the workforce was and is there. Scorpion is now known as Scorpius. They had in mind a phased-in building approach, with the first phase to be completed and operational by April of 24, some 6 months ago, with plans to complete new phases every 15 months thereafter. 2.5 years after that announcement, the piece of ground on US 24 and Excel Road remains vacant. Jason Smith is the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Daryn Soldan is Executive Vice President and Economic Development Director for the Chamber. They are joining us today. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Mike, how are you?
I have no complaints.
Well, first of all, it's the first time I've had a chance to see you since the new show. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
This is a show that, in my opinion, is desperately needed. I think the polarization of politics in today's climate is one of the most threatening. You talk about threats to democracy, but I think threatening to our quality of life and our culture. And so we need more people like you taking this up. We do miss you, though. I mean, we do miss you at the Chamber, and at least I miss you.
That's awfully kind. In complete transparency, Jason and Daryn were professional colleagues of mine for 2 years. In the summer of 22 until the summer of this year, I worked at the Chamber as a manager of external affairs, dealing with government relations and stakeholder relationships. So these guys are pros. They know what they're doing and are eager to get into the conversation. Jason, I guess the first question is, do you think Scorpius will ever come to this region?
Yeah, I know. It's tough to say. We listened to what the governor said, and we'll talk a little bit about how that project got to Manhattan and the state's involvement in that. Things have changed in the economy, certainly since that initial announcement, and how that relates to vaccine development. If you remember, there was a big push for vaccines at that point. So But I think we're in better position today than we were 3 years ago to attract these kind of companies. And if it's Scorpius or if it's another company, I do think that the future looks bright in the opportunities that we have in that space.
We'll talk about that as this hour progresses. Daryn Soldan is in charge of economic development for the Chamber, and we'll talk about the structure between the Chamber and the city government here in addition. But Daryn, I guess the first question for you is give us a sense of just exactly what goes into situations like this. Big announcement, April of 2022. Clearly we were involved with that, but who makes the decisions? Who drives the train on stuff like that?
Sure. Well, first off, Mike, thanks for having us on. Talk about this. Great to see you. And every project's different. And the reality is, in the case of this one, and we can dive into it a little deeper, but in the case of this one, when you have a big announcement like that, and there are ends yet to be tied up. Obviously, there was some work done on the front end to ensure that there wasn't, when you start talking about agreements that have resources going out the door, whether from city, county, state, otherwise, everyone was very, very careful and I think very diligent about making sure that all those agreements would have to be in place and performance would have to precede any of those benefits. And so, in this case, we get a situation where an announcement was probably made too early, and we roll into what comes next, and as a result, you alluded to it, it's expectations, but there's also a lot of protection that goes into the public resources around these types of projects.
It's not probably too early. It got announced too early, I was on In Focus in May of 22 and said that exact same thing, and I've said it multiple times in public settings. And we can talk about how that happened and why we think that happened. But we go through these kind of projects all the time where you get to this stage and you're working it, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But usually you just don't get the public awareness of that those things are going on in the background.
Let's talk about that. One of the reasons, I can say it, right? One of my interpretations of now, looking back, why that occurred, think about that. The spring of 2022, Governor Kelly was on the ballot. She was seeking re-election. She was touting economic development as one of her talking points and one of the things that she was good at. And to her credit, she was. And so it made sense from a pure, raw, blatant political perspective to stand up in front of a group in what could accurately be described as a swing county, right, this area, in the heat of an election and say, yes, we have more of this going on. Is that a fair interpretation?
I certainly think that was probably factored in. I don't know that was the primary reason. Just real quick, just a bit of a clarification. Scorpius is headquartered in North Carolina. They do have a facility in Texas. The company was a little spooked, I think, with an experience they had in San Antonio. They do have a facility in where and Daryn's been there, where they manufacture vaccines in San Antonio, Texas. The mayor of San Antonio is very vocal about his support for Scorpius and their decision to locate in a redeveloped area in San Antonio. But as part of that process, some information on that project leaked out ahead of time before it was announced overall. And I believe to whatever degree, we're not real sure, but I believe the Scorpion group got their hand slapped a little bit from the SEC because there's a process when you're a publicly traded company by which you release that kind of information. And so I think they were super nervous about this getting out and wanting to make sure they got ahead of that process. And again, the Department of Commerce is very aggressive in announcing projects, and they've done a great job on economic development. So I think they just looked at it as another opportunity, and the fact that it was an election year probably didn't hurt that situation. But again, I would say the company at the end of the day drove that because of their concern over the SEC. Daryn, do you have
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. They had ahead of that. They were actually making the announcement of their project in San Antonio during the site selection process. So we were engaged with them at that time and had some understanding. Obviously, it was all confidential yet, but had some understanding what they were going through. And those of you that know politics in Texas, the county judge carries an awful lot of weight, and the Bexar County person had made some comments that got out publicly about what they were doing, and that's not a great situation to put a publicly traded company in doing that. But to Jason's point, they have been successful down there. A really good facility, I think up over 125 employees, doing some really good work, up and going. It's just and we'll get into it some more, but some of the factors that at play that have slowed things down here in the interim.
In Texas, the county judge is sort of the equivalent here of the county commission, right? That is the elected individual that sort of makes decisions at the top of the food chart in a county government. We're visiting with Jason Smith and with Daryn Soldan. They are executives with the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Let's talk about the structure of how you guys do this work. This is the Manhattan Chamber has a contract with city government to do economic development work. So the city relies on the chamber and you guys specifically in your team to help, in essence, check this box for city government when it comes to economic development. That's a standard practice. That's not out of the
I mean,
ordinary.
there's a variety of formats across the country. I think what we have here and why this works for us is we have a very aggressive private sector when it comes to supporting economic development. I would say per capita, we have more private investment into our program than most places around the country. And so for the city, it makes sense to leverage the resources that are raised in the private sector because they get, for all intents and purposes, 3 times the amount of funding, 2 times the amount of funding in private dollars for every dollar they put in. And so that cumulative, you end up with a much better program than you would if you operated those separately.
Jason Smith is the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Daryn Soldan is executive vice president of the chamber and director of economic development. We're visiting with them today about Scorpius and about all things economic development. Stay with us. After the break, we will talk to them a little bit about the incentives that were put on the table by the state and by the city, the status of those and what will happen and with respect to whether Scorpius comes or whether they don't. Stay with us. My name is Mike Matson. The show is Within Reason. This is News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
If Kansas weather has taught us anything, it's to be prepared for everything. It's time to call M&S Plumbing, Heating and Air to make sure your furnace is ready. From full safety inspections to replacing your furnace, M&S Plumbing will keep you and your family warm this winter. If it's been a while since you've had your furnace serviced and inspected, be sure to call and schedule your appointment today. Simple fixes now can save you big money later.
Call the experts who care. M&S Plumbing, Heating and Air. LeMunion Dry Out and Foundation Repair. When the big surprises strike your home.
Hi there, this is Mike LeMunion with LeMunion Dry Out and Foundation Repair. I'm joined by Mr. Ed. Mr. Ed, let me ask if I can, is there a solution for basement walls that are bowing or leaning or basement windows that are cracked or difficult to open?
Definitely, Mike. We can straighten basement walls with our patented wall anchoring system, or as an option, we can stabilize the walls with our patented Whaler beam system. Both systems utilize our proprietary state-of-the-art technology.
Sounds like a great solution. So for a permanent solution and your peace of mind, visit us at lemunion.com today or call 800-528-5535 and schedule your free consultation, not a sales pitch. And ask us about our fantastic 25-year transferable warranty.
Leave it to LeMunion when the big surprises strike your home.
At Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care is right around the corner.
Stormont Vale is more than just a health system. We're your neighbors, dedicated to supporting the well-being of our community and the Flint Hills region. With our strong partnerships, including collaborations with the Mayo Clinic Care Network, other healthcare providers, and various community organizations, we're committed to offering personalized, high-quality care when and where you need it most.
Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care closer to home.
The secret to getting ahead is getting started. The words of Mark Twain. If you know what it's like to be behind and you're looking to get ahead for a change, it's Central Time. Open a new opportunity checking account with Central National Bank that makes finances easy. Account opening is subject to qualifications. Restrictions may apply.
Central National Bank, money for life.
Member FDIC. Money for getting started since 1884.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
We are visiting with Jason Smith. He is the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce, and with his colleague Daryn Soldan, who is executive vice president of the chamber and director of economic development. We're talking about Scorpius. We're going to talk about economic development writ large as the hour progresses. So when you think about the work that you guys do, right, you want to bring private sector job creation to our community. You cast a wide net and you hope that you reel in a fish or two. Give us a sense of how that works. What's it look like? What's it look like? How do we get those leads?
Yeah. So first of all, and I think this is just to clarify this, and sometimes this gets confused because of the media and what the media is interested in, because what people are interested in. 80% of our work is done with existing businesses or small business and entrepreneurs because we know that's where the majority of new jobs are created. We are, though, responsible for being the lead response agency to businesses that are interested in moving into the market. And so we have a variety of ways to sort of garner leads for that process, one of which, and probably the most fruitful that I've had in my 30-year career, is the relationship that you have with the State Department of Commerce, because the majority of people who are working on significant projects start with states, because obviously you can go to one source and you can get information on a number of different communities. And so in the case of Scorpius, that's where it started. We got an inquiry under a project name. We didn't know who the company was, and said, look, they're looking for this kind of space in terms of sites. This is the project description. Submit your best proposal. And we do a really good job representing the community in those responses. That was something that when Daryn started, he really upgraded our ability to respond to those. And so when, and this was 27 state search, and of that initial screening, we were one of 8 communities selected for a site visit, and got a site visit from the company, did a 3-hour presentation with a number of people, including university officials, including Fort Riley officials, including city and county officials. And I think did a pretty good job on that, and made it to the final selection.
As you progress through that process, through that structure, to that will eventually lead, you hope, to this system coming to your area, that clearly there is buy-in along the way from any number of community stakeholders. And so what may have been a secret to begin with rapidly does no longer become a secret. And that's on purpose, right? That's by design. Government systems come to the table with incentives, whether it's tax breaks or whatever it is, right? And that's the case here. So, Daryn, talk to us a little bit about what the state has provided with respect to incentives, and then also where the city is with respect to what are they on the hook for?
Sure. Well, I think, and first off, on the hook maybe isn't the right term, but in this case there were intent made, and so there's a couple things at play there. One, at the state level, there are some commonly used programs that this project qualified for that are statutory. So a qualifying company, you talk about manufacturing companies, companies that have are establishing or have Kansas headquarters, and they do at least 50% of their revenue generation outside the state. Those companies qualify for a couple statutory programs known by their acronyms HPIP and PEAK. One of those is related. HPIP is related to
terrible marketing strategy, by the way. We should come up with better names.
Yeah. Well, we'll tackle that next. But HPIP is known is capital investment based, so it's a state corporate income tax credit based off of capital investment made in the state, and the PEAK program is based off of new employment, and it's a reimbursement or an exemption on the state's portion of withholding taxes, so over a period of time. And so depending on the size of the project and how long that is, can have some pretty significant impacts too. So when we start talking about state incentive packages, the majority of those packages is going to be made up on a project like this, or most projects that we'd work with the state, by those two programs. And again, you qualify, you go through the process with the state. There is an offer made. There's also training programs. There is some discretionary funding available through the state and through the governor's office that can be at play. But in this case, you start looking at those programs, run those numbers. State comes forward with a proposal to the company. And then at the local level, we're working with some tools too. Manhattan has a dedicated sales tax for economic development, for jobs, and so there's a strong history here going back a number of projects over the years that have generated new primary jobs that get jobs incentives from the state. And then Kansas also has the ability through a couple different avenues. You can actually do this through the HPIP program of the state, or do it locally utilizing industrial revenue bond issuance through the city. But the ability to go in and create a situation where there is a property tax, there's a sales tax exemption on materials and labor that's subject to sales tax on the project, and then there's a property tax exemption for up to 10 years. And so those are really kind of the 4 or 5 different things at play on a project like this. And again, those are all established at the state level, statutory at the local level, things that have been utilized in the past with other primary sector producing jobs.
Daryn Soldan is Executive Vice President of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Jason Smith is his colleague. He's President and CEO. Jason, you wanted to build on that point?
I think this is the main point I actually want to make today. The city of Manhattan is not on the hook for anything to Scorpius. And we've never had a formal agreement with Scorpius. And that's when I talk about the announcement was too early. You normally wouldn't make an announcement without a formal agreement following immediately behind that. In this case, we had the announcement, and then we immediately had a quote-unquote letter of intent that was approved by the board, or the city commission. Now, that was only instructing the staff to begin working with a qualified developer and or investor on an incentive agreement, which in our case we call a development agreement, to bring back to the commission. That never occurred. We worked on a development agreement with a developer, and at some point the developer, the company decided to go with another developer, and to this point there's not been another draft of that has been produced. So we are not on the hook. We've not spent any money with Scorpius. We are not committed to spend any money with Scorpius. Now, that doesn't mean, as you heard the governor last week on this show state that they continue to want to work with Scorpius, and that project may get resized, and she'd like to see it in Kansas, and she'd like to see it in Manhattan, and we're open to that as well. But the site that they've looked at is being marketed to new projects, and there is no money that has been obligated at this point to Scorpius, and there's no money that is owed to Scorpius.
If you heard our debut program on Monday the 14th, Governor Kelly was our guest, and we did ask her about Scorpius and the incentives and just how long will those go on, and she indicated there's a shelf life, right? At some point, these may or may not be available, right? My assumption would be that there are other projects that the Commerce Department and the state is looking at that could potentially use these incentive dollars. Is that fair?
For sure. And also we have made sure that the Scorpius people know that we've had changes in commissions. So they had worked out, what we had discussed 2 years ago was with a different city commission. There was a Pottawatomie County discussion. That was a different commission than will be in place in January, obviously. And so as far as any agreement with Manhattan, that's going to need to be renegotiated if and when they come forward with another project. I do know they're working on another project. It was just 2 months ago that Axios did a big spread on Manhattan and specifically quoted Scorpius and their intent to come to Manhattan. I do think they're working on that, but we are not waiting for that to pursue other opportunities. And if something else comes up, we're gonna move fast.
We'll talk about that in our second half hour with Jason Smith, the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber, and his colleague Daryn Soldan, executive vice president of the chamber and director of economic development. When you think about just this notion of incentives that's just part of the process, right? It is government incentives to bring private sector systems to the company. Or to the community, right? And those were in place here. The governor says there's a shelf life on the state ones. The city is not out anything. There have been, though, some infrastructure improvements over there, right? There's a new fire station. There's some new road construction. Is that investment that will be lost, or give us a sense of how local governments what they've invested so far and what that looks like?
I'd say it's fair to say that there's been private investment made on the site by the property owner in conjunction with There were some agreements in place at one time with the company on that. But as far as the public investment piece, there has been talk about the fire station, and the city has some property over there, but that hasn't necessarily been finalized and an exact timeline on when that's going to be built. And I think that's part of a larger conversation there with a Highway 24 gateway study and looking at a lot of potential future development over there on that side of town. So I'd say it's fair that none of those things are inherently or independently a result just of Scorpius news. The reality is there's an awful lot of growth potential going east along that Highway 24 corridor, and again, I think that kudos to the process that the city of Manhattan has when it comes to economic development and incentives and working these kinds of deals that you have to perform to get the resources. And so that piece, I think people can be comfortable with that those public dollars are being looked after well, and there is not a significant or there isn't an upfront outlay that's been made.
Fair enough. Daryn, last question before we go to break. You're clearly the individual that probably has had the most contact with Scorpius. Help us understand what those conversations have looked like over 2 years, right? I'm sure you're part salesperson. I'm sure you're part cajoling and encouraging them to do stuff. But help us understand, give us a flavor for those conversations.
Sure. I think in economic development, our role is, as you mentioned, it's multifaceted. It is sales, but it's also trying to get the best deal and a positive result for the community. And so, obviously, we've had communications with them over the last couple of years as things have changed. The market and biotech changed significantly. Interest rates went up. There were other projects in the pipeline in this space that we had that obviously never got announced, but that aren't going forward. And so it is not something uncommon to see these types of projects get put on hold, reframed, scope and scale changed, and partners from a development standpoint and from a financing standpoint change over the last few years. So we've seen a lot of that. So those conversations have been in that space. There's also been engagement from the company, whether it be with Manhattan Area Technical College, K-State, BioKansas. They've had engagement with the folks that do the work on a workforce side, also that are doing work on an advocacy side. Had some of the federal people in town earlier this summer meeting with K-State and MATC about some of the training programs they have, and they were part of that conversation. So, as Jason said, they're working on it. It is a difficult environment right now for those folks, and again, I'd just go back to that's why you never, no matter how good a deal looks or whether it gets announced too early or doesn't get announced at all, at the end of the day, looking out for the best interests of the community is very, very important in this work. And while it's disappointing that things haven't progressed to this point, it's also important to note that there has not been an outlay of local resources to get us to where we are today.
Daryn Soldan is Executive Vice President of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce and is the point person for economic development in our community with his team. His colleague is Jason Smith. He is the President and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber. We'll continue our conversation with these two gentlemen as Within Reason continues. We will talk a little bit about what it's like to try to attract private sector jobs in a community where we have relied for decades on government systems. Stay with us. This is Within Reason on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Dollars spent locally today help build a better community for tomorrow.
D&I Plumbing, Heating, and Air will provide honest and quality service when you need it most. From a leaky faucet to replacing your water heater. Trust the experts at D&I Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your York and other makes and models local dealer. Call 537-7138 today.
Turn your memories into a masterpiece at Candlewood Frame Shop. Whether it's framing your favorite picture floating around in the digital cloud or creating a shadow box with cherished things or memorable events, Candlewood Frame Shop. Let them turn your stories into a masterpiece.
For a once-in-a-lifetime experience, engagement ring shopping simply can't be duplicated on a computer screen. At Fifely Jewelers, you'll be pleasantly surprised by our pricing compared to buying online, and we offer financing. Plus, you'll have peace of mind by shopping locally with Fifely Jewelers.
Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Find more great local businesses plus special deals and offers when you keep it local on our website.
Attention homeowners! Are you looking to enhance the curb appeal and protect your home? Buck Roofing Company has been serving Kansas for almost 20 years. They are the go-to experts in premium siding solutions with new LP siding or James Harding options. Your home will stand out while being protected against the elements. Call their office for a free, no-obligation estimate today, 785-230-9379. Buck Roofing, where quality and professionalism come first.
Now at Menards, save big money on everything for your next painting project. Give your space the Platinum treatment with Platinum Plus interior paint. Its stain shield technology protects your spaces with a performance you'd expect from luxury paint. Save big on Dutch Boy paints at Menards, and don't forget to check out Dutch Boy's 2025 color of the year, Mapped Blue. Plus, check out our weekly flyer on Menards.com for all the great deals happening now.
Save big money at Menards.
There's only one place to go for the best digital advice. That's the Kim Komando Show, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. with me, America's digital goddess Kim Komando, on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our guests today are Jason Smith, the President and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce, and Daryn Soldan, Executive Vice President of the Chamber and Director of Economic Development. We're talking about Scorpius. We're talking about private sector job creation, all things economic development. Jason, in the first half hour, you had mentioned that we have significant private sector investment in the notion of economic development. That's also a best practice in the industry. Give us a sense of the work that you do in a community like ours that is somewhat unique because for decades we have relied on big government systems, Fort Riley, K-State, to sort of carry our economy. You cannot always expect that the military recruitment numbers will be going up, that enrollment will be going up. So how does private sector job creation fit into that?
Yeah, so we've always talked about the three-legged stool, right? K-State, Fort Riley, private sector, and we have definitely had an uneven stool over the last several years. And I think what has happened and I always am real careful how I say this, it is remarkable that we've been able to sustain as well as we have, considering the headwinds that we've faced, right? So we lost a brigade, 3,500 soldiers, 1,500 civilian personnel associated with that brigade. So 5,000 employees at Fort Riley, 10,000 fewer family members today than there were 10 years ago. Those are the Army's numbers, and 4,000-ish less students. And so the fact that we have sustained ourselves in light of those headwinds is truly remarkable. And there's a lot of people that deserve credit for that, including my predecessor, Law Butler. However, we are at a point that we have to start looking at other ways to grow our economy. And we have a dedicated group of private sector leaders who have been funding this program now for 20 to 25 years, the Economic Development Program, and have worked to pass the Economic Development Sales Tax, which has generated 2,000 jobs that are still here today that have been, that sales tax has been used to attract those jobs. And we have to continue to work hard and make sure that we're focused going forward. And again, I will say this because I think sometimes it gets lost because people are interested in what's new coming to town, right? The majority of our success is going to come from our existing businesses and small business and entrepreneurs. That's just the reality. It's the reality in every community. And if you take a look at the most successful private sector businesses in Manhattan that we equate, they were all entrepreneurial ventures, or they continue to be entrepreneurial ventures, right? Think Civic Plus, think Steel and Pipe, think Manco Windows, think Champion. I mean, our largest private employers were started by entrepreneurs. And so those are the kind of things long term that we want to make sure that we're facilitating. The attraction things are, hey, let's work and if things create opportunities and we can cluster different kinds of industries, let's figure that out because we need to be looking at all sources. But for the most part, we are a small business existing industry organization.
The Advantage Manhattan is the title given to the private sector system that makes investments. And my experience is that the private sector can move quicker and can be more nimble and flexible than government. That's not a knock on government. That's a description of the way they work. And so as a result, they're asking you guys to do some work that maybe the city has not asked you to do. You're underway with that now with respect to this private study.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, some of the headwinds we faced has caused our growth to be stagnant. And so we've not added population to the level that we need, in our opinion, to sustain the quality of life that we all expect. We've not added the number of jobs that in our opinion, you need to sustain our quality of life. And so we've asked an individual, Matt Tarleton's his name. He is most known to Kansans as the guy that wrote Framework for Growth for the state of Kansas Department of Commerce, which has led to all the massive awards they've received in economic development, and said, hey, Matt, help us identify 3 or 4 key things that we can do to sort of spark growth. And what are the things that are maybe holding us up that we can change, or what are some opportunities that we're not seeing that we can implement? And so he's been working on that for about 9 months, and we'll actually present that to our board tomorrow. We have our annual board retreat, and we'll get feedback from our board. And ultimately, once they approve that, because it was funded by the chamber and it was funded through private sources, then we will make that presentation to the city and look to them, hopefully, to partner with us on this.
I don't know how much of that is proprietary, but in a broad general sense, give us a feel for what is in that and what are the recommendations that he will make.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things in terms of our business attraction that he's recommending that we tweak a little bit. I think there's some things in the development process that we've all heard before that I think maybe we'll tweak a little bit. And then, this constant issue that we've talked now for multiple years on the change in the economy globally and away from office projects and retail projects and more to warehouse manufacturing and sort of the reshoring of a lot of those activities, and we aren't really set up for that. So what do we need to do to be prepared more for not just those opportunities, but then things that spin out of the university? We are a land grant institution, and we're good at building stuff and improving processes, and that requires manufacturing space. And so how do we go about investing in those items to improve what we have here?
Jason Smith is president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Daryn Soldan is executive vice president and is the lead person on economic development. Daryn, give us a sense of maybe the unique circumstances in this community when it comes to balancing that government-driven economic development versus private sector economic development. How do you have to please two masters?
I don't know if as much as pleasing two masters as it's understanding how to leverage the strengths and the benefits of both. Obviously, we've got a lot of things that go on at K-State that go on because of the federal government and NBAF, and will continue to grow and go on there because of Fort Riley. I mean, you look at Fort Riley as an asset when it comes to 2,000 plus transitioning soldiers a year, that this is their last duty station, and obviously you've got some percentage of people that go home, right? But you also have some percentage of people that for the right opportunity would stay, and the federal government has some great programs that you can engage people into the local workforce during their transition time from the military. And so leveraging those kinds of things, some of the opportunities Jason alluded to, Kansas State University and land grant and making things in manufacturing, but it's also things like the research and development piece and labs and animal health and biosecurity and those sorts of things. Again, we start talking about the actual physical spaces that work gets done in. They're industrial, right? They have systems and they have
require space.
They require space, and so I think that's really it's a balance there to some degree of how do you leverage the assets and the benefits that exist within the public sphere, but connect it to private industry, and that takes some work. It's not as easy as just waving your hands and it happens. There has to be value on both sides.
It takes more than one phone call, I would suspect.
It does.
Okay, fair enough. We're visiting with Daryn Soldan and Jason Smith, executives with the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. We will talk after the break about some of the other things that have surfaced in the conversations with Scorpius, which is how we started this conversation. The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. The experienced professionals at the Trust Company are recruited specifically for their financial, legal, accounting, and business expertise. They're also your neighbors who, guided by your hopes and dreams, will come to deeply understand your aspirations and goals. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Our only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Stormontvale Health is your go-to for exceptional care right in your own neighborhood.
The Flint Hills campus in Junction City is open 24/7 with a full-service hospital and rural health clinic. You'll find primary care and advanced lab services at our Wamego clinic to keep your family healthy without the drive. Our Manhattan campus offers a wide range of primary and specialty providers, plus imaging and lab services, and a pick-me-up at Radina's inside our campus. Visit stormontvale.org.
Stormontvale Health. High-quality care closer to home.
I never dreamed I'd reach age 100. I really didn't.
C. Clyde Jones is a legend around Manhattan. The first dean of K-State's College of Business is now 101 years old. Clyde's recipe for longevity includes his customized daily home care provided by passionate, trained professionals from Interim Healthcare.
What I treasure the most at Interim is the personal relationships I've developed with the personnel who come to take care of me. Just a wonderful group of people.
At Interim Healthcare, our mission is to improve people's lives.
Well, in my case, I call it help me sustain the quality of life, because I've led a good life. No room for improvement, but the quality of Interim's help is just so good. Home health, and it's worth every penny. I just love the women who come.
We care, we're there. Interim Healthcare.
Topeka, Manhattan, Lawrence.
This is Tori Berard, and I'm the bank manager at ESB Financial. We're a local community bank, and our vision is to help our clients achieve their dreams. So what's your dream? Is it to own a home in the Manhattan community? Do you want to open your own business? Or are you working on building your savings account for a dream vacation? Whatever it may be, we want to help. Come see us at ESB Financial and find out how our unbeatable products and customer service can help you achieve your dream. Member FDIC.
Equal Housing Lender.
Blueville Nursery's Horticulture Hints radio show comes to your radio every Friday morning at 10 a.m. We will discuss timely gardening and landscape topics to help you keep your lawn and garden in tip-top shape. Blueville Nursery has been your local landscape service and garden store for over 50 years, and we want to share our time-tested techniques with you. From vegetable gardening, spring and summer annuals, to shade trees and lawn care, we'll cover it all. You're welcome to call into the show to ask questions that apply to your own landscape or garden. Stay tuned to Blueville Nursery's Horticulture Hints radio show every Friday at 10 a.m. right here on News Radio KMAN.
The Ramsey Show.
So I am 20 years old, straight out of high school. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to start my own business selling furniture.
What does selling furniture look like?
So I go around picking it up, clean it up, take really good pictures and sell it. I'll probably do about 100 grand this year net.
Wow. Some of you are standing around with your finger in your ear. And then you got a 20-year-old with a high school education that's making 100 grand flipping used furniture.
He's laughing all the way to the bank.
Financial advice for everyone. The Ramsey Show. Weekdays from 10 to 1 on News Radio KMAN. KMAN's Morning News. Tomorrow morning, 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our guests today are Jason Smith. He is the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce, and Daryn Soldan, executive vice president of the chamber and director of economic development. These are the two individuals within the Manhattan community where the buck stops with respect to economic development, and we're delighted to have them with us. We started this conversation talking about Scorpius and where they are with respect to their decision making and when or if we might ever get there. In those conversations, clearly, to get Scorpius here, you guys, in doing your due diligence, have had contact with other systems, other companies that might want to come here. I know a lot of that is proprietary, but what can you tell us, big picture, about where that stands with respect to the potential for landing some others?
I think we are in a great position as a community. Jason alluded to earlier the couple pieces that Axios, the news outlet, did earlier this summer. They had their science and technology editor here in town, and with a number of meetings with stakeholders and others, and this idea that this is a growing hub of biotechnology and biodefense, not just because of the location of NBAF here, but because of some of the other resources and things that are available. There's been significant investment at the university, both from the state level, as far as in the state budget, and also from the federal level with some dollars that Jerry Moran helped bring here, and Senator Moran's involvement in that has been really important. There was a great announcement here a month or two ago related to the biomanufacturing core and training facility at K-State. This is something that there's actual lab space, there's cluster hires being made of faculty, biomanufacturing is something, when you say, how do we leverage NBAF? How do we play in the biodefense game? Biomanufacturing is so vital to that. So that's not just things like Scorpius was talking about doing vaccines. There's other materials that get made. There's inputs into processes. Food is a very similar process from a facility standpoint and everything else. So some of the things that go on with K-State and food safety and future looking to the future and ensuring that that the world is fed and the technologies that support that are there is really important. MATC has been doing some great work. Obviously, they just cut the ribbon here recently on their new advanced technology center. There is lab space in there that is earmarked for a future biomanufacturing program. There's also some really unique cutting-edge space that they're just finishing building out. I was through this a few weeks ago that I think is going to be incredibly impactful. But it's related to the systems and managing those secured systems, like you see in a place like K-State's Biomanufacturing Research Institute, or you see at NBAF, or you could see in facilities of companies that are doing biomanufacturing that is related to biodefense or that is being ultimately sold to the government. And so these sorts of things that both from the 4-year academic institution, but also from the technical training side, these sorts of programs are really setting us up to be in a position where if you're transitioning out of the military and you want to go into a field that is growing nationwide and presents a lot of opportunity, you can get that training right here in Manhattan, Kansas. And so having that pipeline, having the training, then makes the community in the region attractive to companies that are operating in that space.
That's Daryn Soldan. I'll ask Jason Smith. Jason, when you talk about how economic development has changed over the course of your professional career, right? Early on, I suspect, I've heard this term a lot, chasing smokestacks, right? That no longer occurs. What Daryn is describing is biomanufacturing, biologics, right? Stuff that is sort of connected to the essence of a land-grant university. Give us a sense of what that means for economic developers in terms of how you approach your work.
Well, I mean, so I started this 30 years ago, and I was actually just thinking about this the other day, and to me the biggest change is just the availability of information. I mean, we'd get an RFP and we would have to do 10 notebooks that we would go down and overnight them to agree, and they would disseminate the notebooks and you get a lot more visits because it was hard to get your eyes on things. And so certainly technology has changed what we do a great deal. I think the important thing, and going back to the Scorpius, and because I just want to make sure that the community understands this, and Daryn, along with Jason Hilgers at the City of Manhattan, are really excellent at doing this. We made it very clear right after Scorpius announced, when it was Scorpion then, that the announcement did not usurp our due diligence process. And as a community, we are committed to making sure that if we engage with a company on incentives, we're going to do everything in our capacity to make sure that they say that they can do what they say they're going to do. And we did not let the announcement usurp that process. And we had said all along that our deal was going to be with whoever was developing and would own the building, because in our mind, that investment was the key trigger for making this project happen. So Scorpius would be in there. If for whatever reason that didn't happen, you still had a really cool biomanufacturing building that we were going to attract somebody else to. And we never got to that point. So we never had a deal, and we're not on the hook for anything to Scorpius. We're not on the hook to anything to a developer out there. And so I just think today we have to be more thoughtful, and we have to be more thorough than maybe we've ever been before. And I think other communities are doing the same thing, right? There has to be a clear benefit to both parties. And we had not gotten to that point with Scorpius. We hope we can, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And if not, we'll find somebody else.
And I'll put you guys on the spot, right? So Daryn, you're the pro who talks to these kind of folks every day. What are the chances that Scorpius will land in Manhattan, percentage 0 to 100, in some form or fashion?
Don't do it.
You ain't kidding about putting me on the spot on that one.
I'll
be honest,
50-50
Mike. I'll be honest, Mike. I don't know the information from an internal company standpoint and their finances and their partnerships with their financing and developing folks to give you a reasonable number there. I know that they're working on it, as we alluded to earlier. I know there is a lot of headwinds in that space. They've been successful with what they've done in San Antonio, but obviously they're struggling to get it across the finish line here.
Jason Smith, let me ask you this question related to the work that you do and the other communities that we compare to or compete with. Who is our biggest competition in this space?
Oh, it's global, right? I mean, we hear a lot about Texas A&M and College Station doing a really good job in this, and we've copied a lot of what we do here, and I think K-State has copied a lot of what they've done from Texas A&M. That's probably, in terms of the central, in biomanufacturing, the central part of the country. You talk about food and some ag things. I mean, we're always going to compete with Iowa. We're always going to compete with Nebraska.
In Indiana, you start talking about food, animal health. So you got some universities, Purdue and others there that are deep into that space. We're always going to compete with the metropolitan areas.
Fair enough.
In this part of the country, just be from a space standpoint.
Fair enough. Last question to Jason Smith. He's the president and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. We touched on this earlier with respect to where the chamber is going, driven by private sector investors to create private sector job growth, right? This is a community, right or wrong, that for years has, and these are my words, has rested on its laurels with respect to the economic growth that we have received from Fort Riley and from K-State. You don't change that overnight. Give us a sense of that culture and some of the conversations underway that will try to get people to understand that there might be some oomph added to that third leg of the stool.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're really focused on now, and because I think there's been some challenges in the community, and Scorpius is one of them, but right now there is there's a sense that maybe people are down on themselves a little bit, or they're doubting the community a little bit. And I think one of the things we're trying to do going forward is to reassure this community that we can do this, right? I mean, there are so many great things going on in our community. Just, I was thinking about just in the last month, when we have the groundbreaking for the Child Care Accelerator. We had the ribbon. They had the gala, and we're about to have the ribbon cutting on the new museum. We participate. We've participated in ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. It's incredible the amount of momentum that we have, and we can't let a couple of unfortunate things derail that. And so, as we think about that going forward, we have to look at ourselves as a kind of, why not us, right? Why can't we be the next biohub? Why can't we be the next food research and security hub? There's no reason those things can't happen. And I'm incredibly excited about President Richard Linton and what he's doing, and I'm incredibly excited about our new city manager. And there is no reason why we can't be the next great metropolitan area.
Jason Smith and Daryn Soldan, thank you very much for your time and showing up today on Within Reason. It's great to see you guys again.
Yeah.
I miss working with you.
Come by and see us. Have coffee with us.
By all means, we'll have you both back individually and separately as well. So thank you again for showing up and talking a little bit about Scorpius. You're listening to Within Reason. My name is Mike Matson. This is News Radio KMAN. Coming up this week, we still have plenty of candidates for public office. On Friday, we will hear from Paul Buskirk. He is seeking to unseat Republican Congressman Tracy Mann in the 1st U.S. House District. He is running all over the 1st District. I chatted with him on the phone the other day. He knows what he's up against. There hasn't been a Democrat elected to that seat since 1952, and that guy only lasted 2 years. Tomorrow, we will hear from Melody and Chuck Sexton. They are with the Flint Hills Veterans Coalition, and they are involved with plenty of events and opportunities related to Veterans Day, and we'll talk with them about what it means to be a veteran, not only in this country, but specifically within this community. Next week, Linda Morse and Megan Steele are candidates for the 51st Kansas House District being vacated by Kenny Titus. We will have them on the air as well. We hope you tune in for those shows and more. My name's Mike Matson. The show is Within Reason. You are listening to us on News Radio KMAN. Thank you.
KS State Bank offers convenient